Hey, how's it going? I want to do part 2 on a video series on how to hang IKEA cabinets and make them look good. So the first thing we're going to do is obviously we're going to put the uppers in, and we have to hang them on the wall. And part of the issue, especially in my old house, this wall is, I don't know, 150, 200 years old almost, probably. Not exactly straight and level and plumb. In other words, the wall has lots of imperfections. So we have to kind of fix those as we go along, as we hang these. Otherwise, if we just hang them the way they currently look, we'll end up with the cabinets looking all wonky, just like the walls. So I'll show you guys how I'm fixing them. The first step with hanging these cabinets is to hang this rail. And this rail is what the cabinets will hook onto. What's nice about this is you don't have to be suspending the entire cabinet to try to hang it. I don't know if anybody's ever tried to hang a whole cabinet, but you're holding all that weight, you're trying to screw it in the wall. It's really tricky to hit the studs. You have to know where they are. So what's nice here is I can find the studs ahead of time, which I've marked with these little lines. And then I put the rail up, which doesn't weigh almost anything. And then I can hit the studs, and then I can adjust right on here. I don't know if you can see this, but I can move it up and down by just screwing one of those in. And using a laser, which is what I've got right here, so I've got my laser level, I can really fine tune that adjustment and make sure that all of the rails are at the same height. And that's gonna make a huge difference because suddenly things are gonna start to be level. Then what I'll do before I finally screw it in is I will come back and I use this little tiny digital laser or digital level, and I'll make the fine tuning adjustments to be able to get them to be right in the right spot. So that's how you hang the rails. And then after you hung the rails, you're gonna put the cabinets up there. They've got a great system for doing that. You can see they've got this, let me get that in focus here. There we go. They've got these rails that basically run behind there, and then you're attaching those directly to the frame of the cabinet with a little hook system that goes through the back, and it hooks it on there. And let me show you kind of what that looks like. So let me zoom in just a little scoosh here. So there's that little hook. There's the rail and then the hook over top of it. Now, I actually brought the cabinet out using a spacer piece of wood, and I've done that for two big reasons. One, I really want to put this lighting in, and I'll show you what that looks like here. Let me see if I can get back there. So can you guys see that lighting? So that's a LED strip light. And then I've just changed the position of the standoffs up a little bit on the cabinet so they're not blocking it. And then below here I have my actual down lights that we'll use for spotlighting if you really need that. But this lighting will go on and off with a timer that's adjusted using the Hue. It's called the Hue Lights app, and it adjusts for daylight changes, and it gives a really nice warm light. And then you can adjust that light. And what'll end up happening, let me get a piece here, is when we tile, try to do this one-handed, it's always the hardest part on YouTube. When I tile, I'm gonna tile up behind the cabinet. So from in front, the tile's gonna look perfect. Obviously it'd be the other direction for subway tile, but you get the idea. It'll allow the tile to sit behind the cabinet, and it will look gorgeous. It'll look like there's no edge. You don't see any issues at all with the tile. So that's why I'm using those little standoffs. So once you've hung it on this upper rail, just like I've done in this cabinet, you're still gonna have some issues because the cabinet may not be level depending on your wall. So in this case, this cabinet is about 1 degree off, which is a lot. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use a spacer back here, put it in behind this cabinet, and I'm just gonna do this with my hand. I'm gonna push it out, And you can kind of see this gap here. It'll start closing. As you push the cabinet off of the wall on the bottom and square it up, you can then adjust square at the bottom. And I'll do that with a strip of wood like this, and I'll also use a few shims until we have this thing dialed in, until it's just right at where it needs to be, right? So once the cabinet is level side to side and level up and down and front to back, we are in a good spot to hang the cabinets. So that's basically what I'm in the process of doing. I am setting all the rails first, using that laser to keep them all on the same level. And then I'm going to level them or bring them off of the wall so that all of them sit so we're level front to back. And then once we're done with that, we'll start working on some trim. One thing I wanted to show you here real quick is you're gonna have areas where the wall and the cabinet are not level or in the right place. So how do you hide those errors? How do you make it so people can't see? So I'm gonna show you a couple ways I do it. Number one, the one I already talked about, you know, there's an uneven gap. If you looked up here, there'd be an uneven gap behind the cabinet because the wall in this case is actually bowed. You can't see that from in front. There's no way you could perceive it. Not only is it below eye level, but it's behind the cabinet. So unless you've got somebody who's gonna come up here and like take a micrometer and measure this, they're never gonna see it. You just can't see it. So that fixes that whole lower section where you can't see what the error is. Above the cabinet, the single most important thing that you do is make sure that your height all along the top is equal to the ceiling. Now my ceiling is level, so it's coming out to about 4¼ inches, but you don't want it to be a big gap on this side and a small gap over here, because that's gonna be super easy to see. So I've checked it from one side of the room to the other. I'm only off by about 1/8 of an inch. So it should look pretty good once we get it all going here. But it's really important that the trim is even across the top. That's why it's so critical that you're level. Because if you're not level, if your ceiling's level and your cabinets aren't level, you're gonna see, it's gonna look all wonky. So that takes care of the bottom and the top. And now we've got the sides on these IKEA cabinets. So like I said in my previous video, I love using the right material for the right location. The melamine foil is amazing for the interior of the cabinets. They use this LR32 metric knob, peg system. Again, that's perfect because you can adjust it infinitely. But on the side, you can see just having a big flat piece of melamine looks kind of cheap. So I've got an area that I need to hide behind the cabinet where I have this gap. And then I want to gussy up or make this front section look better. So to hide it, I'm just going to use a piece of trim, and I'll try to show you here. So I'll just use a piece of trim, and that trim will run along the back and it will hide the gap that you're gonna see behind the cabinet. Now you can see it doesn't quite overlap it. I'll probably caulk that area, but it doesn't matter because what I'm gonna do next is gonna really hide it. So let me move this out of the way. So this is just an IKEA door, and this is the kind of door that you'd use on a slightly smaller cabinet. But what I'm gonna do, let's see if I can do this one-handed, is I'm gonna set that door and screw it into the side of this panel from the back. It'll be screwed in from the back. And then what that'll do is once this is painted, this thing is going to look like a raised panel on the side of the cabinet. It's the same shaker doors that I'm using on the faces, so it's gonna look really nice. That little piece of trim, we're only gonna see a little bit of it just along the very back edge, and then up here will be crown molding. So between the panel on the side and that little bit of trim, the lower section being tiled behind and kind of, just because of depth, you can't see underneath there anyways. And then the trim on the top, and then obviously trim between the cabinets. You won't be able to tell that the wall is wonky. All you're gonna see are cabinets that are level, that are flush, that look perfect. Because of those panels on the side, it's really gonna make it look pretty fancy. So everything will be HVLP painted. I'll get more into detail on that, but I wanted to show how they get hung, how we adjust. It's like a house. This is the foundation of the house. When you're hanging the cabinets, they have to be hung, first off, strong. You have to tie into the studs directly so that you have a really strong connection to the wall so that things aren't gonna fall down later. But then you have to get everything level and straight. And that's my two tricks, using the laser level to get it level across the wall, and then using wood and shims to kick it out so it's level up and down. And once you get all that done, and then you start putting on this trim, it's gonna look great. You're gonna walk up to it, it's gonna look amazing, and people will think it cost you a fortune when you just did it yourself on the weekends. All right, hope this helps someone.